let's dive into, I think, the biggest concern right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that is the cornerback position. I brought out my 53-man roster following the preseason opener. I had one outside signing coming into Pittsburgh before the end of the summer, before their 53-man roster is finalized. That is at the cornerback position. What I saw from James Pierre and Luke Barcoo in Tampa Bay was atrocious. I thought both of them. I thought James Pierre gave Luke Barcoo such a good opportunity to take advantage of poor play and say, hey, look, I'm ready to carry the momentum that he had the last 2 weeks of training camp and say, or even the last week of training camp and say, look, I could take this into a game. Here's my big play. Let's move on. I have the advantage now. Didn't do so. James Pierre, 9 solo tackles, which is the worst stat you could possibly have for a cornerback. Terrible game for both of them. I think right now, if there's a position that the Steelers have to go out and get, in my opinion, it's corner.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think especially for right now, just you don't know what Joey Porter Jr.'s deal is, but
yeah,
I'm not very confident at all in the guys behind him. Luke Barcoo, I think, was someone who came in with, I wouldn't call them expectations, but a little bit of hype, a little bit of, oh, this guy could be something like, talented. I like him as an athlete, like his frame, long arms, things of that nature. But just has not been impressive to the level which I think a lot of people were hoping that he would be. And then James Pierre, I think started real strong in training camp, but has only gotten worse as time went on. Jeff Hathorn actually made the good point that his like best rep of coverage from Friday night was the one he gave a touchdown up on. Like
it really was. It really was.
Yeah.
And even that he was 2 steps. The only reason it was good coverage is because the ball hung in the air so long that he could catch up to it. Before that, I mean, when the camera turns to that wide receiver, James Pierre is like 3 yards in front of him, and the guy's standing in the corner of the end zone. You're going, what are you doing? Like, and it just got worse from there. I mean, and Luke Barcoo, I thought was the same way. Like James Pierre, at one point, James Pierre added to his tackle total because Luke Barcoo was so far behind his guy by the time that wide receiver, and it was Trey Palmer who tore these guys up, caught the football. James Pierre had to catch the football. And that's the thing is, it wasn't top tier talent, like last year, I believe, I could be wrong on this, and sometimes my memory does mistaken me, but I'm almost positive that Tampa Bay, when the Steelers hosted Tampa Bay last season, it was Josh Jackson and James Pierre on the outside started that game against Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and they held their own. Like they played quality football. And you go up against Trey Palmer and some other dude that I do not know for the whole game, and you're giving up passes left and right, and you look like you can't hang. And I just thought that it was, especially for a guy like James Pierre, like I look at him this year as the same person as Anthony McFarland. This is it. Do or die. You're either going to come in here and showcase that you could be an NFL player and that you can contribute and that it's all catching up to you and you are ready to go, or you could look at it and say, yeah, no, I'm not built for this. I can't do this. I'm inconsistent. I'm just not somebody you could count on. And I think right now you're looking at this guy going, I can't count on him. And then Luke Barcoo, just like you said, had some hype, especially at the end of minicamp, making some plays, made some plays the last week of training camp. You felt good about him going into the preseason game. He looked just as bad. I just don't think they have an answer right now. And you cannot roll one of those guys out there because Patrick Peterson is 33 years old, so you cannot rely on him for an entire season, whether you want to or not. Joey Porter Jr. is a rookie, so you can't rely on him for an entire season, whether you want to or not. Injuries happen. You cannot roll one of these two out and say, oh, yeah, we could win against the makings of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Amari Cooper and Odell Beckham Jr. and Zay Flowers and all these other names that the Steelers have to play for the 2023 season. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, like I completely agree about James Pierre. I think that's a great analogy. Like Anthony McFarland, who has taken full opportunity of his, you can call it his last chance. I feel like that's fair enough to say. Like, and James Pierre is just on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And James Pierre is a guy who you could maybe have lived with some of the mistakes that he made when he was younger, and when you thought there was some potential there, but yeah, just not enough for him at this stage of his career, and he's just losing trust, I think, more and more. I think it was someone the Steelers really wanted to believe in and really wanted to, because they kept him around for a while when
they
probably didn't have to. But yeah, this this is not trending in the right direction for him. It would take a pretty dramatic turnaround, I think, first of all, for James to stick around, to give himself a fighting chance to stick around, to even, like, quite honestly stay on the practice squad, versus and then another step for the team to trust him enough to say, yeah, we can play you in a real regular season game and feel comfortable with you out there for any stretch of time.
Yeah, yeah. I just don't think it's going to work. I think you have to sign somebody. I don't think it's going to happen now, and I think that's going to be the argument, and has been the argument. I've talked with people, and they've said, "Well, who are you going to sign?" Nobody right now. There's nobody out there. But in 2 weeks, 32 teams are going to cut 37 people. So there will be plenty of options to choose from, and not all of them are going to be quality signings, but some of them will be given an opportunity, and I look at it like Jameer Jones last year, where the Steelers just we spent the whole summer talking about, is Derek Tushka developed enough to be the outside linebacker 3? And then the second that the Steelers had an opportunity, they traded for Malik Reed and signed Jameer Jones, or claimed Jameer Jones off waivers, and ditched Derek Tushka. I see that coming with the corners 100%. I think they're going to sign somebody, maybe make a late trade. Who knows? William Jackson's still out there. You want to go sign William Jackson? Go sign William Jackson third. I mean, it's not, but it's better than that option. Like, it's better if he could stay on the field. He's better than James Pierre and Luke Barku. Yeah. Like, there are options out there, and if you can find a cheap enough one that makes sense, you have to. And I think that the Steelers will. If I had to guess, that's the one signing that's going to come.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about there is someone. I mean, think about there is someone out there who has the equivalent of the Steelers' defensive line or receivers room at cornerback. Like, just way too deep, got too many bodies, and someone just ended up being the odd man out. Probably based on talent alone and production alone, could have been a player good enough for the 53rd man, but just not enough room. Too many guys in front of him. So I think there will be NFL quality players available after those rounds of cuts come through. So just kind of two sides to that. For like James Pierre and Luke Barku are kind of going to get a second chance. They're going to have some opportunities, I think, over the rest of the preseason to fight their roster spot. But like I said, it's going to take a pretty dramatic turnaround, I think, for the Steelers to not jump on one of those guys who gets cut later in the preseason.
Yep. And that's everybody should be waiting for it, because it'll be exciting. Corners are exciting. Hopefully it's a name. We'll see what happens, but there's no way you could walk into the regular season and say, well, worst case scenario, James Pierre could play corner for us. Nope, he cannot.